What would you do if your family demanded you sell everything you've worked for? Your home, your dreams, to save someone who never learns from their mistakes. I'm Claire Mitchell, and that's the choice I faced one Sunday morning in my Austin apartment. My parents stood at my door, expecting me to give up the life I'd built to bail out my brother. Again. It wasn't just about money. It was about years of sacrifice, of being the responsible one, while others leaned on me. In Texas, we value family, but at what cost to ourselves? Stick around for a story of standing my ground. I'm a financial consultant in Austin, Texas, but my life wasn't always this stable. This 800-square-foot apartment, with its hardwood floors I refinished myself and cabinets I painted after long workdays, is more than a home. It's proof I built something from nothing. At 17, I was accepted to UT Austin with a partial scholarship, dreaming of a future I'd planned for years. But my parents took my $30,000 college fund, money my grandparents started, to pay off my brother Nathan's gambling debts. They promised to repay it, but I never saw a dime. So I worked 3 jobs, waitressing, bartending, tutoring, living in a cramped apartment with 5 roommates, eating ramen to survive. Every semester was a financial tightrope, choosing between textbooks and groceries. After graduating, I landed a job, saved every penny, and 5 years ago, bought this place downtown. Holding those keys, I cried. Not just for the apartment, but for the years of sacrifice it represented. Growing up in Houston, Nathan was the golden child. His soccer games celebrated while my academic awards gathered dust. My parents, Karen and Robert, saw me as the one who'd figure it out. But figuring it out meant carrying the weight of their expectations alone. This apartment is my victory, a symbol of my independence in a city that values resilience. Yet, that Sunday morning, my parents' demand threatened to unravel everything I'd fought for, dragging me back into a cycle I thought I'd escaped. This is my story of standing up to family pressure, of refusing to let my hard-earned life be sacrificed again. If you've ever had to draw a line with family, maybe here in Texas where family ties run deep, drop your story in the comments. I want to hear how you found the strength to say no, to protect what's yours. Are you watching from Austin, Houston, Dallas, or a small town like Round Rock? Let me know where you're at. I'm reading every comment. If this story resonates, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss more stories of Texans standing tall against tough odds. Your support keeps this channel going, and I'm grateful for every one of you joining me on this journey. Let's keep this conversation alive, because setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's how we build stronger families and stronger selves. Share your thoughts, and let's show the world what Texas grit looks like when we choose ourselves without losing those we love. Growing up in a Houston suburb, I learned early on that my family had 2 sets of rules, one for my brother Nathan and one for me. Our house on a quiet cul-de-sac, with its sprawling oak trees and manicured lawn, looked like the perfect Texas home. But inside, the dynamics were anything but fair. Nathan, 2 years older, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. His soccer games were family pilgrimages, Mom and Dad cheering from the sidelines, their faces glowing with pride as he chased the ball across fields in Katy or spring. I can still hear the roar of the crowd, the way my parents clapped for every goal, every missed shot, like it was the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, my academic competitions, my late nights studying for math Olympiads or spelling bees, were barely a blip on their radar. My certificates and medals, earned through hours of solitary work, went into a box under my bed, gathering dust while Nathan's participation trophies lined his bedroom walls like a shrine. It wasn't that my parents, Karen and Robert, didn't love me. They did, in their way. But love came with expectations, and mine were clear. Be the responsible one, the one who doesn't cause trouble, the one who figures it out. When Nathan crashed the family car at 16, joyriding with friends after a game, my parents rushed to comfort him, telling him accidents happen. When I needed help with college applications a year later, Dad's response was blunt. "You're the smart one, Claire. You'll handle it." And I did, alone. I spent weekends in the library, poring over forms, researching scholarships, while Nathan's latest drama, failed classes, fights with coaches, dominated family dinners. In Texas, we pride ourselves on family loyalty, on standing by each other no matter what. But for me, that loyalty felt one-sided, a weight I carried without question because that's what good daughters do. Looking back, those years shaped me in ways I didn't understand then. I learned resilience in that Houston home, where Friday nights meant barbecues with neighbors, but also quiet moments where I'd escape to the backyard swing, dreaming of a life where my efforts mattered. My parents weren't cruel. They were caught in their own patterns, seeing Nathan as the one who needed saving and me as the one who didn't. But being the strong one came at a cost. Every ignored achievement, every time I was told to handle it, built a quiet resentment I buried deep. I didn't want to be the problem child, so I became the invisible one instead. That childhood taught me to rely on myself, a skill I'd need more than ever when everything changed at 17. It's a story we all know in Texas, working hard, keeping your head down, hoping one day someone notices. But what happens when they don't? At 17, I stood on the edge of my future, accepted to UT Austin with a partial scholarship, my heart racing with the possibility of a life I'd planned for years. I'd worked tirelessly, straight A's, part-time jobs at a Houston diner, saving every tip for college expenses. My grandparents had started a college fund for me when I was born, a $30,000 nest egg my parents added to over the years. It was my ticket to freedom, to a degree in finance, to a life where I could stand tall. But one evening that dream shattered. My parents called me to the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared countless Texas-style Sunday dinners. Brisket, cornbread, the works. The yellow overhead light cast shadows on their faces, and I knew something was wrong. Mom, Karen, twisted her wedding ring, her eyes avoiding mine. Dad, Robert, was direct, his voice heavy. "Claire, your brother's in trouble." Nathan had gotten mixed up with gambling. Poker games, shady bets, people you don't cross. He owed $30,000, almost exactly the amount in my college fund. "It's just temporary," Mom said, her voice soft, pleading. "We'll pay it back before you start school in the fall." I sat there, stunned, the weight of their words sinking in. Family comes first. That's what they'd always taught me. So I nodded, swallowing the sinking feeling in my gut, trusting their promise. But that money never came back. That fall, instead of moving into a dorm on the 40 acres, I rented a tiny room in a rundown Austin house with 5 strangers, the kind of place where the AC barely worked in the Texas heat. To survive, I worked 3 jobs: waitressing at a diner on South Congress, bartending at a dive bar near campus, and tutoring high school kids in math. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. 4 hours a night if I was lucky. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. to serve breakfast, rush to classes, then pour drinks until midnight. Ramen was my lifeline. Some weeks I chose between buying a textbook or groceries. The Texas spirit, grit, hustle, never giving up, kept me going, but it was brutal. Meanwhile, Nathan dropped out of community college, living at home, working odd jobs when he felt like it. My parents never mentioned the fund again, as if my sacrifice was just expected, another way I was handling it. I'd see families at the diner, laughing over pancakes, and wonder why mine couldn't see me the same way. Every semester was a financial tightrope. I applied for every scholarship, begged professors for extensions when work cut into study time, and learned to stretch a dollar further than I thought possible. In Austin, surrounded by the buzz of campus life, I felt alone, carrying the weight of a promise broken. But I refused to quit. That betrayal, that loss of $30,000 wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about being invisible in my own family. It fueled me to prove I could make it, not just for them but for myself. I didn't know it then, but that struggle was building the strength I'd need years later when my parents came knocking again. Graduating from UT Austin was a victory, But it wasn't the end of the fight. I landed an entry-level job as a financial consultant in Austin, a city I'd grown to love for its mix of grit and vibrancy. Food trucks on Rainy Street, music spilling out of bars, the hum of ambition. The irony wasn't lost on me. Advising clients on financial security when my own had been so precarious. But I excelled, maybe because I knew firsthand the cost of bad decisions. For 3 years, I lived in a cramped apartment with 4 roommates, the kind of place where you hear every neighbor's argument through thin walls. I saved every penny, skipping vacations, new clothes, even nights out at Austin's famous barbecue joints. My goal was clear. Own a home, something that was mine, something no one could take away. 5 years ago, I qualified for a mortgage on an 800-square-foot apartment in downtown Austin. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty space, hardwood floors bare, walls untouched, and cried. Not just for the apartment, but for every late night, every missed opportunity, every sacrifice that led to that moment. This place wasn't fancy. No granite countertops or skyline views, but it was mine. I refinished the floors myself, sanding until my hands ached, the Texas sun streaming through the windows. I painted the kitchen cabinets after 12-hour workdays, my radio tuned to KUTX, local music keeping me company. Every piece of furniture came from thrift stores on South Lamar or estate sales in Hyde Park, carefully chosen to replace the hand-me-downs I started with. Each nail I hammered, each brushstroke, was a declaration. I built this life from scratch. In Texas, we talk about staking your claim, about building something that lasts. This apartment was my claim, proof I could rely on myself when no one else did. My parents, still in Houston, kept their distance. Holiday visits, occasional calls, but always with an unspoken tension. Nathan's cycle of jobs and debts continued, my parents bailing him out while I built my life, step by painful step. 3 months before that fateful Sunday, I got a promotion to senior consultant, a reward for years of proving myself. My emergency fund was solid, my retirement accounts growing, and I even planned a trip to Big Bend, my first vacation in years. For the first time, life felt stable, predictable, mine. Austin, with its live oaks and bustling streets, felt like home, a place where I could finally breathe. But that stability was fragile. When my parents showed up, demanding I sell this apartment, the one I'd poured my soul into, it wasn't just about property. It was about erasing everything I'd fought for, about pulling me back into a role I'd spent years escaping. In Texas, we're taught to stand tall, to protect what's yours. This apartment wasn't just walls and floors. It was my independence, my proof that I could rise above the weight of family expectations. As I stood in that empty space 5 years ago, keys in hand, I promised myself no one would take this from me. That promise would be tested in ways I never imagined when my parents walked through my door with their demand. It was a quiet Sunday morning in my Austin apartment, the kind of Texas dawn where the air feels still, and the city hasn't yet woken up. I was halfway through my coffee, hair still damp from a shower, savoring the calm I'd worked so hard to earn. This 800-square-foot space, my refuge, my proof of independence, was a world I'd built from years of sacrifice. Then the doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected, cutting through the peace like a knife. I wasn't expecting anyone, not on a weekend, not in the heart of Austin where life moves fast but mornings stay slow. Through the peephole, I saw my parents, Karen and Robert, standing in the hallway. Dad shifted impatiently, his jaw set like he was ready for a fight. Mom fidgeted behind him, her hands twisting, her eyes darting like she was bracing for something heavy. I opened the door, forcing a smile, my voice light despite the knot forming in my stomach. "Surprise visit," I said, hoping to ease the tension that was already thick enough to choke on. Mom hugged me tightly, her familiar floral perfume pulling me back to childhood in Houston, to moments that felt simpler but were never equal. Dad gave a stiff nod, his eyes scanning my apartment, not with pride, but with something colder, almost calculating. "Nice place you've got here," he said, but his tone carried a bitterness I couldn't place, like my success was an inconvenience. I offered coffee, trying to keep things normal, but Dad cut me off, his voice sharp as a West Texas wind. "We don't have time for coffee, Claire." Mom shot him a look, her voice softer, nervous. "What Robert means is we have a lot to discuss." We moved to my small living room, them on the sofa, me in the armchair, the space between us feeling like a canyon. Dad leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his face all business. "It's about Nathan," he said, and my heart sank. "In Texas, we talk about families sticking together, riding out storms side by side. But every time Nathan's name came up, it meant a storm was coming for me." "Your brother's in trouble," Dad continued, his voice low, final. "Serious trouble." Mom's hands twisted in her lap, her eyes pleading. "He got caught up in some investments, a crypto thing that went wrong." Dad cut in, blunt as ever. "It's gambling, Karen. He tried to win it back at casinos. Now he owes $50,000 to people who don't wait for payment." The number hit me like a punch. $50,000. A debt that could destroy everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for in this city I called home. The air in my apartment grew heavy, like the Texas summer heat pressing down before a storm. I sat there, staring at my parents, their words echoing in my head. $50,000. Nathan's debt, but somehow my problem. I knew what was coming, but I needed them to say it, to make it real. "What exactly are you asking me?" I said, my voice steady despite the dread pooling inside me. Dad's eyes locked onto mine, unyielding, like he was sizing up a business deal, not his daughter. "We need you to sell your apartment," he said, the words landing like a sledgehammer. "It's the only way." Mom nodded, her voice trembling, almost desperate. "Nathan could go to jail, Claire. Or worse. Those people. He's scared to even go home." I repeated it, disbelieving, my voice rising despite myself. "Sell my apartment. This place. Every hardwood plank I'd sanded, every cabinet I'd painted, every thrift store find I'd carefully chosen, wasn't just a home. It was my life, my proof I could stand on my own after they'd taken so much from me." Dad leaned back, crossing his arms, as if it were simple math. "Property values in Austin have skyrocketed. You'd make a profit, enough to cover Nathan's debts and then some." Mom chimed in, her tone softer but no less manipulative. "You could rent for a while, honey. Or move back to Houston with us until you save up again." Move back to Houston. I was 32, a senior consultant with a career in Austin. The idea of uprooting my life, commuting 3 hours each way, was absurd. "And where would I live?" asked, struggling to keep calm. "You'd figure it out," Dad dismissed, waving a hand. "This is family we're talking about." Family. That word stung, twisted into a weapon. "What about Nathan?" Pressed, my voice sharp now. "What's his plan to pay me back?" Dad's response was predictable, infuriating. "He'll get back on his feet. He always does. Always does." I couldn't hold back. "When has Nathan ever stood on his own without you bailing him out?" Mom gasped, her voice scolding. "Don't talk about your brother that way, Claire." But Dad went further, his tone hardening. "We're not asking, Claire. This is family money." Family money. The audacity of it burned. "Family money." Shot back. "I worked 3 jobs through college after you took my $30,000 college fund for Nathan's gambling debts. I lived in apartments with black mold to save for this place. How is this family money?" Dad's face reddened, his voice rising. "We raised you, put a roof over your head, food on your table. You wouldn't have anything without us." The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as their words reopened old wounds. In Texas, we're taught to honor family, to sacrifice for those we love. But this wasn't love, it was a pattern, one I'd lived through too many times. Mom's tears started, soft at first, then louder, a tactic I knew too well. "Do you want your brother to end up dead?" she sobbed. "Is that what you want?" The guilt hit hard, just as it had when I was 17, when I'd nodded and let them take my future. But this time, something in me resisted, a quiet strength forged in Austin's hustle, in years of proving myself. I wasn't that girl anymore, but the weight of their expectations still pressed down, threatening to pull me back into a cycle I'd fought to escape. I looked at my parents, their faces a mix of determination and desperation, and felt the familiar tug of guilt pulling me under. But I couldn't say yes. Not this time, not after everything. My apartment, this small corner of Austin I'd carved out, was more than a place to live. It was my stand against a lifetime of being the one who always gave in. Still, I wasn't ready to fight, not yet. "I'll think about it," I said quietly, my voice steady but hollow, "just to make them leave." Dad stood, taking my words as a victory, his tone final. "We need an answer by the end of the week. Nathan doesn't have time." Mom reached for my hand, her eyes wet, but I pulled back, unable to bear her touch. They left, the door clicking shut behind them, and I sank into my armchair, alone with the weight of their demand. The silence in my apartment was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of Austin's streets below. I felt trapped, caught between the family I loved and the life I'd built. This wasn't just about selling a home. It was about erasing everything I'd worked for, every late night at the diner, every dollar saved, every dream I'd held onto through years of struggle. In Texas, we're raised to put family first, to stand by each other no matter the cost. But what was the cost of always saying yes? I'd lost my college fund at 17, my credit score at 23 when I co-signed Nathan's loan, countless opportunities because I was too busy fixing his messes. Now they wanted my home, my sanctuary, the one thing that proved I could rely on myself. I walked to the window, staring out at the Austin skyline, the city that had become my refuge. The guilt was there, whispering that I was selfish, that Nathan's life was on the line. But another voice, stronger now, reminded me of the truth. This cycle of enabling, of sacrificing my needs for his mistakes, would never end unless I stopped it. I thought of the Texas women I admired, resilient, unapologetic, building lives on their own terms. I wanted to be one of them, not the daughter who always gave in. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across my hardwood floors, I knew I had to find a way to break free, not just for me, but for the family I still hoped we could become. After my parents left, their demand to sell my apartment hung over me like a Texas thunderstorm, dark and unrelenting. I stood in my Austin living room, the hardwood floors I'd sanded myself feeling unsteady beneath my feet. I needed to talk to someone who'd see me, not just the responsible one my family expected. So I called Jessica Sullivan, my best friend since our UT Austin days, now living in San Antonio. Jessica's voice, warm and fierce, crackled through the phone, grounding me instantly. "Claire, what's going on? You sound like you've seen a ghost." I spilled everything. The doorbell, my parents' faces, the $50,000 debt Nathan owed, their insistence I sell my home to fix his mess. My voice broke as I said it out loud, the weight of it crushing me. "They want me to give up everything, Jess. Everything I've built." Jessica didn't hesitate, her Texas grit shining through. "Are you kidding me? You ate canned beans for years to afford that place, Claire. You worked 3 jobs through college after they took your college fund. And now they want your home. No way." Her outrage was a lifeline, pulling me back from the guilt threatening to drown me. "They've been leaning on you your whole life," she said, her voice softening but firm. "Nathan's their son, not your burden. You've got to prioritize yourself, girl. You're not their ATM." I laughed despite myself, a small release in the storm. Jessica always knew how to cut through the noise. Her San Antonio bluntness, a reminder of the strength I'd forgotten I had. "What if they're right? asked, my voice small. What if Nathan's in real danger? Jessica sighed, her tone gentle now. Then he needs to face it, Claire. You can't keep saving him. You've got your own life, your career, your apartment, your dreams. Don't let them take that from you. In Texas, we're taught to stand by family, but Jessica's words hit deep. Protecting myself wasn't betrayal. It was survival. She reminded me of nights we'd spent dreaming big over tacos on South Congress, promising we'd never let anyone dim our light. You're stronger than this, she said. You've built a life in Austin that's yours. Don't let them guilt you into giving it up. As we hung up, her words echoed, a spark of defiance igniting in me. I wasn't ready to say no yet, but Jessica's voice gave me the courage to start questioning the cycle I'd been trapped in for so long. Jessica's words stayed with me, but the guilt was still there, gnawing like a Texas rattlesnake, coiled and ready to strike. I knew I needed more than a friend's pep talk to face my parents' demand. So I booked a session with Diana Lawrence, a therapist in Austin I'd seen a few times after a tough breakup. Diana's office was a quiet oasis in the chaos of my mind, and as I sat across from her, clutching a tissue, I poured out the story. My parents want me to sell my apartment, I started, my voice low, to pay off my brother Nathan's $50,000 gambling debt. They say it's family that I have to help. But I can't shake this feeling that it's wrong, that I'm losing myself if I say yes. Diana nodded, her eyes kind but piercing, letting me talk until the words ran dry. Why does saying no feel so hard? She asked, her voice calm, inviting me to dig deeper. I hesitated, the question cutting through years of buried pain. Because I've always been the one who fixes things, I said. When they took my college fund at 17, I didn't fight. I just worked harder. Saying no feels like I'm abandoning them. Diana leaned forward, her voice steady. Claire, what you're describing is a cycle of enabling. Your family relies on you to clean up Nathan's messes, but that's not your role. It's theirs and his. By always saying yes, you're not just hurting yourself. You're keeping Nathan stuck too. Her words hit like a lightning bolt, illuminating a truth I'd avoided. Enabling. The word felt heavy but right. I'd been propping up Nathan's failures, not out of love, but out of a guilt programmed into me since childhood. We unpacked that guilt, peeling back layers of my Houston upbringing, where I was the strong one who didn't need help. Guilt is a powerful tool, Diana said. Your parents use it because it works. But it's not your job to save Nathan from his choices. You're allowed to protect your life, your home. I thought of my apartment, the keys I'd held 5 years ago, the promise I'd made to myself. What if they hate me for it? I whispered, my voice breaking. Diana's response was gentle but firm. They might be angry, but that's their process, not yours. Setting boundaries isn't about punishing them. It's about reclaiming your power. In Texas, we talk about standing tall, about facing challenges head-on. Diana was showing me a new kind of strength. Not the kind that sacrifices everything, but the kind that says enough is enough. She gave me tools. A journal to write down my sacrifices, a script to practice saying no, a reminder to breathe through the guilt. You've built a life in Austin, she said. You're a senior consultant, a homeowner, a woman who survived betrayal. That's not weakness, that's courage. As I left her office, I felt a shift, like the first cool breeze after a scorching Texas summer. I wasn't ready to confront my parents yet, but I was starting to see a path forward, one where I could love my family without losing myself. Diana's words were a map, guiding me toward a clarity I'd never had before. Still wrestling with my decision, I took a step I'd never considered before. I joined a support group in Austin for families of addicts. Walking into that community center, I felt out of place, like a stranger in my own city. But as I sat in a circle of Texans, people from Dallas, Houston, even small towns like Round Rock, I realized I wasn't alone. Their stories mirrored mine. Siblings trapped in addiction, parents enabling, family members like me carrying the weight. A woman from Fort Worth shared how she'd lost her savings to her daughter's drug debts, only to learn that bailing her out delayed her recovery. A man from Waco talked about cutting off his brother, how it hurt but saved them both. Their voices, raw and honest, were like a Texas campfire, warm and illuminating in the darkness. In that room, I found strength I didn't know I needed. These weren't just strangers. They were my people, Texans who understood the pull of family loyalty and the pain of setting boundaries. "You're not betraying your brother," one member said, his eyes kind. "You're giving him a chance to stand up." It echoed what Jessica and Diana had told me, but hearing it from others who'd walked this path made it real. In Austin, we're a community that lifts each other up, from barbecue fundraisers to Longhorn tailgates. That night, I felt lifted, my resolve hardening. I could say no to my parents, not out of anger, but out of a belief that breaking the cycle was the truest act of love. For days after my parents' first visit, the weight of their demand to sell my Austin apartment clung to me like Texas humidity, heavy and inescapable. I'd spent those days wrestling with guilt, replaying their words. Nathan's $50,000 debt, the danger he faced, their insistence that I sacrifice my home. But Jessica's outrage, Diana's clarity, and the Austin support group stories had shifted something in me. I wasn't the 17-year-old who'd nodded away her college fund anymore. I was Claire Mitchell, a woman who'd built a life from nothing, and I wasn't ready to let it go. When my doorbell rang that Thursday evening, I knew it was them again. My stomach churned, but I squared my shoulders, ready for what was coming. My parents, Karen and Robert, stood in the hallway, their faces etched with urgency. Mom's eyes were red like she'd been crying, while Dad's jaw was set, his impatience radiating like heat off asphalt. "We need your answer, Claire," he said before I could even invite them in. No hello, no pretense of warmth, just business, as if my life were a transaction. I led them to my living room, my hardwood floors creaking underfoot, a reminder of the home I'd fought for. They sat on the sofa, tense, expecting me to fold like I always had. But this time I was prepared. On my coffee table lay a spreadsheet, months in the making, a reckoning of every sacrifice I'd made for Nathan's mistakes. I'd stayed up late, combing through bank statements, old emails, even my credit reports, tallying the cost of being the responsible one. I slid the spreadsheet across the table, my voice steady but low, like a Texas plains wind before a storm. "Before we talk about my apartment, look at this." Mom hesitated, her hands trembling, but Dad grabbed it, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the numbers. "What's this?" he demanded, his tone sharp. "This," I said, "is what I've already given." The spreadsheet laid it bare. $30,000 for my college fund, taken at 17 for Nathan's gambling debts. $22,000 in lost interest from savings I drained. $12,000 for a loan I co-signed that he defaulted on. $8,000 in credit score damage from missed payments. $15,000 in emergency funds for his crises. $90,000, a lifetime of my security, gone to prop up a brother who never changed. "That's not profit from an apartment," I said, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. "That's my future you've spent." Their faces paled, the numbers undeniable. Mom's eyes welled up, her voice barely a whisper. "We didn't realize it was that much, Claire." Dad's grip on the paper tightened, his knuckles white, but he said nothing, his silence louder than any argument. In Texas, we pride ourselves on facing hard truths, on owning our choices. That spreadsheet was my truth, a mirror held up to their enabling, to the years they'd overlooked my sacrifices. For the first time, I saw cracks in their certainty, a flicker of doubt in their eyes. This wasn't the obedient daughter they expected. This was a woman ready to draw a line in the sand. The silence in my living room stretched, heavy and charged, as my parents processed the spreadsheet's truth. $90,000. My college fund, my savings, my security, laid bare the cost of their faith in Nathan. I let the moment linger, the weight of it sinking in before speaking again. My voice was low, deliberate, forged in the resolve I'd found through Jessica's fire, Diana's wisdom, and the Austin support group's strength. I'm not selling my apartment, I said, each word a stone dropped into still water. This place is mine, paid for with years of ramen dinners, missed vacations, and nights I worked until I couldn't see straight. I won't give it up to fix Nathan's mess again. Dad's face hardened, his voice cutting through the tension. So you're just going to let your brother go to jail? Or worse? Mom reached for his arm, her voice pleading. Claire, please. He's your family. We can't lose him. The guilt they wielded was familiar, a weapon sharpened over years of me saying yes. But this time I was ready. I'm not abandoning Nathan, I said, my tone firm but not cruel. I'm offering a solution, one that doesn't destroy my life. I pulled out 2 documents from a folder, sliding them across the table. The first was a contract for a loan to cover Nathan's most urgent debts, enough to keep him safe. The second was a referral to a gambling recovery program in Houston, one I'd researched with a proven track record. I'll loan him the money, I said, but only if he signs this contract and enrolls in the program. He pays me back with interest over 5 years. No more handouts. Dad scoffed, tossing the contract back. This is emotional blackmail, Claire. You're holding your brother's life hostage. His words stung, but I didn't flinch. Blackmail, I repeated, my voice steady despite the anger rising. I've given $90,000 to keep Nathan afloat. I've lost my college fund, my credit, my peace of mind. This isn't blackmail, it's accountability. Mom's tears started again, her voice shaking. Why are you being so cold? We're supposed to stick together as a family. I took a deep breath, Diana's words echoing in my mind. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're power. Family doesn't mean I have to lose everything, I said. Nathan's had years to change, and you've enabled him every step. If you love him, help him get better, not just out of debt. Dad stood, pacing my small living room, his boots heavy on my hardwood floors. You think you're better than us, don't you? He snapped. With your fancy job, your downtown apartment, acting like you don't owe this family anything. The accusation cut deep, but I saw it for what it was. Deflection, a way to shift the blame. I've given more than you'll ever know, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. I worked 3 jobs through college while Nathan partied. I rebuilt my credit after his default. I've paid for your loyalty to him with my future. I'm done. In Texas, we talk about standing your ground, about facing down challenges with grit. This was my ground, my apartment, my life, and I wasn't backing down. Mom reached for the contract, her hands trembling, but Dad stopped her. We didn't come here for paperwork, he said, his voice low, dangerous. We came for help. I met his gaze, unyielding. This is help, I said. Nathan needs treatment, not a free pass. If he's in danger, this loan covers it, but only with these terms. Otherwise, you're asking me to throw away my home for a problem that'll just come back. Mom's voice was barely audible. What if he can't do it, Claire? What if he fails? I softened but didn't waver. Then that's his choice, Mom, not mine. I can't keep saving him from himself. The words felt like a release, a truth I'd carried too long. Diana had taught me that enabling trapped everyone. Nathan, my parents, me. This contract, this boundary was my way out, a chance to break the cycle that had defined our family for years. I thought of the Austin support group, the Texans who'd shared their stories of saying no to save their loved ones. Their courage fueled mine. This isn't about punishing Nathan, I said, my voice steady again. It's about giving him a real chance to change. And it's about me protecting what I've built. Dad shook his head, his face a mask of frustration, but Mom's eyes lingered on the contract, torn between fear and hope. In that moment, I felt the power of my choice. Not just for me, but for a family that might finally learn to stand on truth, not excuses. The tension in my apartment was thick, my parents' resistance to my terms hanging like dust after a Texas stampede. Dad stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the Austin skyline as if it held answers. Mom clutched the contract, her tears drying but her face still etched with worry. I'd laid out my boundary, a loan for Nathan's debts, tied to a gambling recovery program and a signed repayment plan, but their pushback made me wonder if I'd ever break through. Then the doorbell rang, unexpected and jarring, pulling us all out of the standoff. It was Nathan, uninvited, his presence shifting the room's gravity. I hadn't seen him in months, not since a strained Christmas in Houston. He looked older, worn, his eyes shadowed by the weight of his choices. Nathan stepped inside, his boots scuffing my hardwood floors, his usual swagger gone. "I heard you were talking about me," he said, his voice low, almost sheepish. Dad turned, his face softening for the first time. "Son, we're trying to fix this," he said, but Nathan raised a hand, stopping him. He looked at me, really looked at me, in a way he hadn't since we were kids playing in our Houston backyard, before gambling and excuses drove a wedge between us. "Claire," he said, his voice cracking, "let me see that contract." I handed it to him, my heart pounding, unsure what to expect. He read it slowly, his fingers tracing the terms. Loan amount, repayment schedule, mandatory recovery program. The room was silent, every breath held, waiting for his reaction. Then Nathan spoke, his voice raw, stripped of the defiance I'd always known. "She's right," he said, looking at Mom, then Dad, then back at me. "I've been running from this too long. I've cost you everything." The words hit me like a gust off the Gulf, unexpected and powerful. I'd never heard Nathan admit fault, not like this. "I didn't know about the college fund," he continued, his eyes dropping to the spreadsheet still on the table. "Not the whole story, or the loan, the credit stuff. I just kept taking and you kept giving." His voice broke, and I saw shame in his eyes, not the arrogance I'd expected. "I'm tired, Claire. Tired of messing up, of letting you all down." He picked up the pen, his hand trembling, and signed the contract, the scratch of ink on paper louder than any words. "I'll do the program," he said, his voice firmer now. "I don't know if I can fix this, but I want to try." In Texas, we talk about redemption, about second chances earned through hard work. Nathan's signature wasn't a promise of success, but it was a start, a crack in the cycle that had trapped us all. I felt something shift, a weight lifting, not because I trusted him completely, but because he'd finally seen me, not as the fixer, but as a sister who'd paid too much. Mom gasped, reaching for Nathan's hand, her tears starting again, but this time with a glimmer of hope. Dad stood frozen, his face unreadable, caught between pride and disbelief. I looked at Nathan, my brother, the golden child who'd taken so much, and saw a man who might finally want to change. "Thank you," I said, my voice soft but steady. "This isn't about punishing you. It's about us all doing better." He nodded, his eyes meeting mine, a silent understanding passing between us. For the first time, I felt like we might be family, not just a collection of debts and excuses, standing on the edge of something new in the heart of Austin. Nathan's admission hung in the air, a turning point none of us expected. His signed contract lay on the table, a fragile bridge toward change. But my parents, Karen and Robert, were still grappling with the boundary I'd set. Dad's face darkened, his voice tight with anger. "This isn't what we asked for, Claire," he said, grabbing his jacket. "We needed help, not ultimatums." He stormed toward the door, his boots echoing on my floors, each step a rejection of the truth he couldn't face. I stood firm, my heart racing but my resolve unbroken. "This is help," I called after him. "It's the only way we stop this cycle." The door slammed, the sound sharp in my quiet apartment, leaving a void where his approval used to be. Mom stayed, her hands clasped, torn between loyalty to Dad and the hope Nathan's words had sparked. Her eyes met mine, wet and searching. "I just wanted to keep us together," she whispered, her voice breaking. I softened but didn't waver. "I want that too, Mom. But not like this. Not by losing myself." In Texas, we know love can be tough, like weathered boots that carry you through storms. This was my tough love, for Nathan, for them, for me. Mom nodded, a flicker of understanding in her eyes, but she followed Dad out, leaving me alone with the weight of my choice, and the faint hope that they'd one day see it was right. After Nathan signed the contract, agreeing to my terms, a loan tied to a gambling recovery program, I didn't expect miracles. My brother had spent years running from his mistakes, leaving me to pick up the pieces. But something in his eyes that night, a flicker of shame and resolve, stayed with me. He moved to Houston a week later, enrolling in a recovery program I'd researched, one with group therapy and accountability. For the first time, Nathan wasn't just promising change. He was taking steps. He got a job at a small marketing firm, starting at the bottom, designing flyers for local businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, something he'd never stuck with before. 3 months in, I got an invitation to a family therapy session in Houston. I almost didn't go, afraid of being pulled back into the old cycle of excuses. But curiosity, maybe hope, won out. Sitting in that small office, Nathan across from me, I braced myself. He looked different, still tired but clearer, like the fog of his addiction was lifting. "Claire," he said, his voice low, steady, "I owe you an apology. Not just for the money, but for everything." My breath caught. Nathan apologizing was new, raw, like a wound finally being cleaned. "I was jealous of you," he admitted, his eyes dropping. "Your strength, your life in Austin, how you always had it together. I took from you because it was easier than facing myself." His words hit deep, stirring memories of our Houston childhood. Kickball in the backyard, shared secrets before gambling stole him away. I'd spent years resenting the golden child, but here was a man owning his flaws. "I don't know if I can make it right," he said, "but I'm trying. The program's hard, but it's working." He'd been sober from gambling for 90 days, a milestone he wore like a badge. In Texas, we know redemption isn't a straight line. It's a dusty road, full of stumbles. Nathan was stumbling, but he was moving forward. I nodded, my voice soft. "Keep trying, Nathan. That's enough for now." The therapist smiled, sensing a shift. I didn't trust him fully, not yet, but I saw a brother I might one day know again, not just the addict who'd cost me so much. Nathan's progress forced my parents, Karen and Robert, to face their own role in our family's cycle. Dad, always the stoic Texan, resisted at first, his pride a wall I couldn't breach. But Nathan's apology in therapy cracked that wall. A month later, Dad started seeing a counselor in Houston, a move I never thought he'd make. He admitted he'd enabled Nathan, shielding him from consequences while leaning on me to fix the fallout. "I didn't see you, Claire," he told me over a rare phone call, his voice heavy. "I'm sorry." Those words, simple but seismic, were a start. Mom joined a support group for enablers in Houston, a circle of parents learning to let go. She shared stories of Nathan's relapses, her guilt, her fear of losing him. "I thought love meant saying yes," she told me, her eyes softer now. "You showed me it can mean no." They began sending small repayments for the loan. $200 a month, not much, but a gesture of accountability. Each bank notification felt like a step toward respect, not just for me, but for the boundaries I'd set. In Texas, we rebuild after storms, brick by brick. My parents were rebuilding, slowly, Their apologies and actions a foundation for a family we might yet become. Standing up to my family changed more than our dynamic. It changed me. My Austin apartment, once a battleground, became a symbol of what boundaries could build. Inspired by the support group that gave me strength, I wanted to pay it forward. 6 months after Nathan signed the contract, I launched Boundaries for Texans, a monthly workshop in Austin to help others draw lines with love. I rented a small community center near Zilker Park, nervous but driven, unsure if anyone would show. That first night, 20 people came, men and women from Waco, Fort Worth, even Lubbock, each carrying stories of family pressure, addiction, or sacrifice. A teacher from Round Rock spoke of cutting off her sister's demands for cash. A mechanic from San Marcos shared how he stopped bailing out his son, watching him finally seek help. Their voices, raw and resilient, echoed mine, a chorus of Texans refusing to lose themselves. I shared my story, losing my college fund, rebuilding in Austin, saying no to selling my home. Boundaries aren't walls, I told them, my voice steady. They're bridges to healthier relationships. We practiced saying no, role-playing tough conversations, laughing through the awkwardness. I brought in guest speakers, therapists, recovering addicts, even Jessica, who drove up from San Antonio to cheer me on. "You're building something real here," she said, her Texas twang full of pride. The workshops grew, word spreading through church groups, local radio, even Austin's bustling coffee shops. Each session ended with a promise: to value ourselves as much as we value family, a Texas truth we all understood. Boundaries for Texans became my purpose, a way to turn pain into power. I saw myself in every participant, their struggles, their triumphs, their quiet courage. In Texas, we lift each other up, from barn raisings to Longhorn tailgates. This was my barn raising, a community where saying no wasn't selfish but sacred. As I stood in that community center, watching strangers become allies, I knew I'd done more than save my apartment. I'd reclaimed my life, my family, and now I was helping others do the same, one boundary at a time. 6 months after Nathan signed the contract, my Austin apartment, once a battleground, became a place of cautious hope. I decided to host a dinner, a small step toward rebuilding what years of enabling had broken. My dining table, a thrift store find I'd refinished myself, was set with care. Texas-style brisket, cornbread, and pecan pie, the kind of meal that says home in Austin. Jessica Sullivan, my best friend from San Antonio, arrived first, her laughter filling the room, a reminder of the strength she'd lent me. Ethan Rodriguez, my new partner, was there too, his steady presence grounding me as I faced this uncharted moment. Nathan came next, quieter now, his recovery program giving him a humility I'd never seen. My parents, Karen and Robert, were the last to arrive, their faces hesitant but softer than before, as if the weight of our past was finally shifting. We sat together, the Austin sunset casting a warm glow through my windows, softening the edges of old wounds. Conversation was careful at first, like navigating a Texas creek after a flood. Tentative, testing the ground. Nathan spoke about his job in Houston, designing ads for a marketing firm. His pride in small wins, a new sound. Mom shared stories from her support group, her voice steady as she admitted her role in enabling him. Dad was quieter, but his nods showed he was listening, a change from the man who'd stormed out months ago. Jessica cracked a joke about Longhorn football, easing the tension, and Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, his smile saying we'd get through this. In Texas, family dinners are sacred, a time to mend what's broken. This wasn't perfect. Years of pain don't vanish over one meal, but it was honest, a start toward a family dynamic built on truth, not sacrifice. As the dinner wound down, the clink of forks on plates faded, and a quiet settled over my apartment, like the hush of a Texas prairie at dusk. Dad, Robert, stood unexpectedly, his chair scraping against my hardwood floors. He held his glass of sweet tea, his face weathered but open, a man I hadn't seen in years. "I want to say something," he began, his voice low, rough with emotion. We all froze, unused to Dad showing vulnerability. His stoic Texas roots usually keeping feelings at bay. He looked at me, his eyes meeting mine with a clarity that caught my breath. "To Claire," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us that saying no can be the most loving act." The words landed soft but heavy, like rain after a drought. "I was wrong," he continued, his voice cracking. "I thought family meant fixing everything, no matter the cost. But you showed us a better way, Claire. You stood your ground, kept your home, and gave Nathan a chance to stand up too." Mom's eyes glistened, her hand reaching for Nathan's. Nathan nodded, his face tight with gratitude. His recovery a testament to the boundary I'd set. Jessica smiled, her San Antonio fire proud of me, while Ethan's quiet support anchored me. "We're not there yet," Dad said, "but we're trying because of you. In Texas, we honor those who fight for what's right, even when it's hard." This toast was Dad's honor to me, an acknowledgement I'd never expected. We raised our glasses, the clink a fragile promise of change. "To Claire," they echoed, and I felt seen, not as the fixer but as a daughter, a sister, a woman who'd reclaimed her life. The sunset faded outside, Austin's skyline glowing, a city that had held me through every storm. This dinner, this moment, wasn't the end of our struggles, but it was proof that boundaries could build something stronger, a family learning to love without losing each other. This apartment isn't just a home, it's my strength, my proof that I can stand up for myself. 6 months ago, when my parents demanded I sell it to bail out Nathan, I felt the weight of a lifetime of sacrifices pressing down. My college fund, my credit, my dreams. They'd taken so much, expecting me to give more. But in this 800 square foot space, with its hardwood floors I sanded and cabinets I painted, I found the courage to say no. Setting boundaries wasn't easy. It was like facing a Texas storm, fierce and unforgiving. Yet it saved more than my home. It gave my family a chance to grow. Nathan's in recovery, my parents are learning, and I'm no longer the fixer, but Claire, a woman who values herself. Austin, with its vibrant heart, taught me resilience, from late nights on South Congress to quiet moments in Zilker Park. This city, like me, knows how to rebuild after hardship. If you're out there, maybe in Houston or a small Texas town, know this: your worth isn't tied to what you give up. Saying no can be your power, your way to build a life that's truly yours. My apartment stands as a testament to that truth, a beacon of what's possible when you choose yourself without losing those you love. Texans, have you ever had to set a boundary with family to protect your dreams like I protected my Austin home? Drop your stories in the comments. I'm reading everyone from Dallas to Del Rio. Your voice matters, whether you're in a big city or a town where Friday nights mean high school football under the lights. Share how you stood tall, how you said no to reclaim your life. If this story hit home, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe and ring the bell for more tales of Texas grit, where we fight for ourselves and each other. Your support keeps this channel alive, connecting us across the Lone Star State. Let's keep this conversation going, because in Texas, we know family's everything, but so is self-respect. Maybe you're in San Antonio, sipping coffee by the river walk, or in Amarillo, watching the sunset over the plains. Wherever you are, join me in building a community where boundaries aren't betrayal, but bridges to stronger bonds. My revenge wasn't about hurting my family. It was about breaking a cycle, proving I could stand firm and still love them. Now it's your turn. What's your story of strength? Comment below, and let's show the world what Texans can do when we choose ourselves, not out of selfishness, but out of a fierce, unyielding love for the lives we've built.